Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to The Rock Show with Connor Farrell. Today, our guest for fans of Mac DeMarco and Superhaven, it is Jaxon Malone. Cue intro. Okay, now that we're back from the intro, let's start off with some rapid-fire questions before delving deeper. Okay, so Jaxon, what's one of the first rock artists that you remember really getting into that got you into rock?
Man, I've always been a big Rush guy. Rush is probably one of my favorite bands, and I would have to say Rush for sure. Yeah.
Excellent. Now, for the uninitiated, the unfamiliar, what's one song that they have to check out from Rush?
Ah, ooh, that's a good one, man. I would have to say if you're a more technical person, like La Via Strangiato is a great song, but if you're just looking for something, pretty simple, Fly By Night is my favorite, my personal favorite. So,
La Via and Fly By Night. I can't disagree with those. Okay, now for a new rock artist. What is a
mm.
new artist, maybe not a new band or new music, but new to you, one that you're just getting into?
Man, there's a very good band out of North Carolina, I believe. They're called Fox and Veed, and they've been super cool. I've been listening to them a lot lately. So yeah, I'd probably have to say those guys, man.
And once again, what is one song?
Man, I can't name one off the top of my head. Let me go to Spotify here, and I'll tell you the one that I have been streaming a whole lot. Their
It's
song "Holy Water" is super, super good. That's the one I've been listening to quite often.
Holy Water. Okay, well now that we're done with the rapid fire,
Yeah, man.
let's talk Rush. Let's talk
Yeah,
Fox and Veed. What is the inspirations for the music when you're approaching Jaxon Malone Band versus,
man.
you know,
When
before?
it comes to inspiration, I take a lot from songwriting, man. Before I did the rock and roll stuff, I had nothing but an acoustic guitar and time on my hands. So I just wrote a lot of stuff. And eventually, when I picked up my full band, we had that rock and roll style. And I wish they were here with me. They could tell you as well. But when I picked up my band, we kind of had that rock and roll style. So I just took some of the songs that I had been writing that were more quiet and, finger style and stuff like that. And we just applied the power heavy, fast eccentric stuff. And man, when it comes to like inspirations behind Jaxon Malone, I like super heavy stuff. So it's like super heavy guitars and instrument tracks, and then like something lyrical over it, like something that people can relate to. So, you know, I I guess that's something that ties into Rush a lot because like Neil Peart wrote all their songs. Neil Peart wrote all their songs, and probably one of the greatest, most underrated songwriters out there, and he was the drummer. So it's pretty cool.
That is very cool. Yeah, I always assumed it'd be Alex Lifeson or Geddy Lee. I
Right.
never knew that it was Neil.
Yeah,
That is,
Neil wrote most of their stuff.
how did he write La Via?
Well, Lavia is like what, like an 11-minute song or something like that.
Yeah.
It's mostly instrumental, so it's like who knows? They probably all took part in that one.
Yeah. Man, so you're saying, so let's say Fly By Night then. You're saying the lyrics.
Yeah,
Got it. Okay. Okay. Well, how do you, yeah, so you said you want lyrics that connect with people, something they can grab onto.
absolutely.
How do you approach that?
Man, I know there's not many original experiences out there. So like being somebody who's probably experienced the same thing as a whole lot of other people, I just write kind of what I experience and what I feel, because if I'm feeling these things and if I'm experiencing some things like that, I'm guarantee you there's somebody out there that's feeling the same way, so it's always going to reach somebody eventually. At least I hope,
Yeah. Yeah. And so within those, let's say you've got 10 ideas. Do you turn all of them into songs or how do you approach that?
That's a good one, man. I mean, when it
Yeah.
comes to writing songs, occasionally I'll just like I have notes on my phone, the notes app, and I'll just get in there and I'll write a bunch of stuff that doesn't even fit into a song. I just write, know, and sometimes I'll just pick something up on the guitar. You know, I'm very guitar centered. Like I start on guitar first usually when it comes to writing a song. So it's like, you know, I'll have something on the guitar and I'll go back into something that I was writing in my notes, and you know, I'll just try to put something. I'll try to put two and two together. You know, sometimes it'll fit and sometimes it won't. I have a whole lot of things that are like half finished or a quarter finished, and you know, so
Yeah. When you've got those quarter finished ideas, do you ever try and smush them together?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, dude. Like I'll take lyrics from other songs all the time that just didn't work out, but they kind of fit in the aspect of another song. I do that quite often, actually. I did that one on a song I wrote a couple days ago. Yeah.
What was that about?
Oh, well, the last song I had written about was being better off just not speaking to the person you've become very attached to because it hurts you more than it does you good. And I wrote a song like 6 months ago that I can't remember what the line was, but there was a line in that song that kind of fit in this one, and so I just kind of threw it in there.
Oh, okay. So when you're talking about that, speaking, you said someone you care about or someone you wish you didn't care about, or maybe sometimes that's the same.
I mean, honestly, both. Yeah, I mean, somebody you've developed such an attachment to, and then you know, it like what their actions towards you start to affect your mood, and it
Mm.
just does more bad than good, and you wish you didn't care so much. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's a pretty way to look at it.
Okay, now I get where you're saying super heavy.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, I was just writing a song about a posh British gentleman who is a puma and he
Wow.
gets captured by witches.
Oh, dude,
So that's very heavy stuff.
that's crazy. I gotta hear this. That's so cool.
Eh,
Yeah,
eh,
the
yeah,
abstract
dude.
stuff. The abstract stuff is some of my favorite too. Like I could never bring myself to write it just because I don't think I have the that much mental space, you know. I just write about how I feel. But then there are people out there who just they can think up anything, man. I'm
Yeah.
jealous.
Well, that was mostly my brother. I was like, wait a minute. I was joking around because I wanted to do a cover,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh, what if you changed one word for witch in the name of the song? And it's like, oh no, it's too good. I have to do it. I have to at
That's
least write the
great, dude.
song. And then
Yeah.
the more I went on the lyrics, you start, and then just before you know it's 4 hours later, you haven't eaten anything. It's 4 p.m. You're like, what the happened?
Yeah. That
Dude.
happens quite often. You lose track of time pretty quick, especially when you're lost in the moment, man. That music does that pretty often. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you like playing shorter sets, or right now when you're starting something new, do you book 15-minute spots? How do you approach that?
Man, we've been doing a lot of headliners.
Oh, wicked.
Yeah, man, we're not really a festival band. We've played a few festivals, and that's something we're looking to get into in the future, for sure. The more we progress, but lately we've been touring all over the Texas area, and we're hoping to get out of state here pretty soon. But we've been headlining most places, and typically our sets are 90 minutes to and 2 hours. So
Wow. Okay, that's good. Okay. So you're able to really lose yourself in it then.
yes, sir, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a big driving thing. It's like time doesn't really matter when you're up there.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so let's start with how are you booking these?
Mm,
What's your sitch?
Man, I'm independent. Most of my bigger stuff, I have a fake name. I have an email that's pretty anonymous. It's like Jaxon Malone Booking, and man, I use a different name, and I'm just like, hey, and I give them all my information as if I'm somebody else representing me. And being 17, it's a little bit harder to get taken seriously by booking agencies. So using a name and portraying yourself as an adult representing said kid is a little bit more effective, I've found.
Yeah. So when did you start that process, and when did you realize I should make a fake? agent.
Right. You never really prepare for like having to have a fake name, I guess. I guess it was more I had been rejected by so many like opportunities just because I came at them from hey, I'm 17, I want this show, here's what I can do, here's what I play, and they're like, that's all great, but you're 17,
Yeah.
and I just feel like I was getting turned down a lot more then. And eventually I was like, man, I feel like if I just came at it with some sort of representation, like, hey, I'm this guy representing this kid, this is more
Yeah.
professional. Coming at it from a more professional standpoint, I feel like works.
Yeah,
Worked.
so how old were you when you started? So you're 17 now. When
Yes.
did you start, trying to book those things and getting rejected? Because I imagine it wasn't yesterday. It was,
No,
maybe a year
yeah,
ago, a couple years ago.
that's
Yeah.
that's very true. When I say 17, I mean like I was in this same position, like same time last year. Just
Yeah.
uh, Like, I would say that I was probably 15 when like I started shooting for bigger stuff, and I was getting shot down because of my age. And of course, I've built up a little bit more of a history in the scene, and a little bit more numbers and things to look at that look
Yeah.
good to those agencies, so I can get shows a little bit bigger. But man, I've been playing live for about 4 years, 4 or 5 years. Um, so I guess you could just, I guess you could say the whole time, pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah, so what's your I guess what's your biggest goal?
Uh, I want music to pay my bills one day. Uh,
Yeah.
I just want it to be able to support me and hopefully a family in the future. And, I get to travel the world and play music to anybody that'll listen and pay my bills.
Yeah. So are you thinking that's going to be ticket sales? You think that's going to be merchandise and tickets? Like what's your
Well,
approach?
we all know it's not going to be Spotify and Apple Music paying those bills.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, I'd have to say, ticket sales and merch and stuff. That's probably what's going to be most of the profit there. Especially if I'm being able to play big venues and being able to sell out for crowds. That'd be great in the future. I mean, just got to work to get there.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Well, I guess how do you measure because it can be easy to feel like, oh, I don't know, like I'm making progress and I'm doing fun, but like maybe in like 2 years from now when you're 19, because I know for me, like I started my band and started like booking shows and I ran into your problems, right?
Yeah.
I've got a fake guy too.
Really? See, it's effective. It works.
Corey Bradley, manager
Oh,
MGMT. That's
dude,
our agent.
that's awesome. That's freaking awesome.
I'm like, I'm Jewish, so I can say this, but I was like, I came up with a 48-year-old Jewish man
That's
who's
great. Yeah.
like, what? You need this? And so I'm like, perfect.
Yeah,
I will use
absolutely.
all my relatives as inspiration.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. Great.
Oh my god. No, so it's okay. So when I was 17, I was like, yeah. I was like, I'm just gonna like run at it, and which is good. But then like as life kind of like started going along, and then I got out of college, like I graduated early, and then I started working and started doing stuff, I realized I was like, holy cow, if I don't like prioritize music and like gigging and having a band together and doing stuff, if I don't have like, if I don't define full time, right?
Yeah.
Because for me, I had the same goal. And I still have that goal.
Yeah.
But if I didn't define how that was going to happen, it was really easy to get demoralized and feel like, well, this is hopeless.
Yeah.
Like, because what I'm doing isn't getting me, or it's hard to know if it's getting you where you need to get to.
Yeah, man. It slips away from you very fast for sure. It's it's an industry that no matter what genre you're in or anything, it's an industry that takes a lot of dedication and a lot of attention because you can't just take 4 to 5 month breaks if you're a smaller artist looking to get big. You can't just take 4 to 5 month breaks and expect things to be the same when
Yep.
you get back. And it's a very quickly changing industry as well. So keeping up with those changes and just putting a lot of your time. I mean, a lot of these guys, they eat, sleep, and breathe it. At least the people that I know in this industry, man, they work hard to get where they're at, and I like to say I do the same, or I try at least.
Yeah. Yeah, and I that's part of one of the things that I'm so grateful that I get to do this podcast is I
Yeah,
get
man.
to meet other people because for the longest time I was the only guy eat, sleep, breathe in it. And when I wasn't, I was like, something's wrong with my life. Like, I am horribly messing up. I'm not on track. I'm going the wrong way, speeding down the highway in the wrong direction.
Yeah,
And so now I get to connect with people. I'm like, yes,
dude.
yes.
Yeah,
People
it's
who
a
get it
good
because you
feeling.
feel like you're crazy. You feel like you're crazy.
Yeah, you do. You do. You get to a point. When I first started this, I was still in school. I'm
Yeah,
homeschooled now. I went homeschooled to pursue this as quickly as I could,
yeah.
just because when I get
Congrats.
out of the house, I'm not sure what this is going to look like. You know what I mean? When I
Yep.
have to pay for my own like apartment and things like that. But
Yeah.
when I was in high school and I first started doing it, man, nobody else at the school was trying to play music, and it felt like an isolated deal where it was like, I told all my friends like, hey, I'm really gonna do this, I'm gonna try my best, and this is something I'm very passionate about. I would always get well, how's your little music thing going, or like, how's the how are those little gigs you're playing? You know what I mean? And I'm like, dude, it's not little to me, and it felt very isolated for a while, just working towards stuff like that.
Bro, I get how's your little podcast doing? And I'm like, I could in 2 or 3 months, this can be full time money.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Sucker, and it's just and so funny too. I'm in grad school for engineering right now. And I've got
Right.
other friends who are in school for engineering, and they'll be like, "How's your little pot?" I'm like, "You idiot! I'm gonna be making double your money in like 3 years, playing
Dude,
shows
it's
and
all
doing
about
everything."
yeah, man. It's all about the manifestation.
And I'm not yucking your thing. They say don't yuck someone else's yum. I'm like, I don't got a problem if you want to be an engineer and that's what you like doing and being happy. But like I realize that that's going to be a day job for me
Yeah,
until music. If I'm like, don't act like yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. I think that it's very good to have a fallback plan, especially because I'm going to go to college next year as well.
Congrats,
I'm going to
congrats. Good
thank you,
idea.
thank yeah,
That's what I'm
absolutely.
doing.
Yeah, dude, it's very smart in my opinion,
It's
just
an
to have
on
something
ramp.
to fall back on and to, it's like a
Yeah.
backup plan. You know what I mean? Especially I feel like if the people who really want something in the music industry will work their hardest, and they will make their own
Yep.
opportunities, and they will create things like that. And it's okay to have a job and stuff. Like, you don't have to be full time right out the gate. And like, that's something I've had to tell myself. It's like I can't just leave the house and boom, boom, boom. I'm gigging. I'm definitely gonna have to support myself in other ways. And that's something that I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, well, he has a job and he plays music, so it's just like a little hobby, right? And you're like, no, man,
Yep.
this is my life, you know. And
Yeah. Well, it's the same way with other people in like school almost, right? You're like,
yeah,
no, this is the 4 or whatever, the 8 or the 12 years. If let's say you're becoming a doctor, you're
yeah,
like, this is the period where you're like, people work and go to school, and you don't go, oh, how's your little college degree going? You're
yeah,
like, you're like, yeah, I'm preparing and building up to do the thing I want to do for career. It's like
exactly.
pre-career. It's like early career stuff. Yeah. I think it's because this is my thought. My thought is the money is still here in music, even though a lot of there's been a big reduction in the music industry investing in new artists compared to like the '90s, right?
Yeah,
When there was the CD sales and you could make, $1 million more,
yeah,
for every person than you can now. But I
yeah.
think the money's still there. I
It
just
is.
don't think you get it from the CDs. I think you get it from podcast advertisers. I think you get it from the merchandise, the live shows. Like, I think comedians figured it out with the podcast thing because they realized even if the shows aren't making full time money, if their podcast can, then they're able
Yeah,
to buy back 40 hours a week and put all
yeah.
that energy into being way better at their craft.
Exactly. That's a big thing. I feel like, especially now that streaming services, it's like what 0.0004 something.
You make $100 if you get 1 million streams.
Yeah, exactly. It's so cheap, and I feel like a lot of musicians are taken for granted in that sense. And it's like, it's
Yeah.
become more of a business venture for a lot of these big companies than it is a like, hey, we love music too, and we
Yeah.
want you guys to be just as successful as I think that whole thing. It's big rigmarole. Same with like Ticketmaster and all that stuff, and I think that the game is still definitely there. It's just so much different than it used to be. And of course, I wasn't even alive when the game was first being played in the
Same.
90s, CD sales, but it's like I go back and I look, and I read and I look at how things used to work then, and it's so much different. It's insanely different. You don't make money for people buying your CDs and things. You even the people who get hundreds of millions of streams, like whoever you want to name right now, like Mac DeMarco and whatnot, he says that he lives comfortably, you know, like off of the music that Spotify makes, and that's enough for him. But like the people who are mega rich are touring every year. They're
Yeah.
selling loads of merch, and there's a lot of business that goes into this for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think there always was, and this is the thing that's kind of interesting is, back then you would have to get the logistics of pressing the vinyls or getting the CDs made and packaged and distributed to people. And so to do that, you still had to have the business. Now it's just a different set of things you have to do.
Yeah.
And getting from 0 to 1, getting from hobby to full time, that's the thing that hasn't been charted out as well. And
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
once you have a couple, like maybe in 5 years from now, there's a bunch of examples of how to go from that gap. That's when
Yeah.
I think you see people try and like turn it into a business again. I think you've got whatever the next iteration of a record label type
Yes.
thing.
Very true. And I think that a lot of people discount the amount of knowledge that you have to have going into stuff like this, especially the more you progress. You've got to know what you're doing, because like you can't just wing this industry anymore. It's all down to like a little fine print,
Yeah.
and especially knowing like budgeting and things. Like touring is not cheap. Touring isn't cheap. Getting merch isn't cheap anymore. Like the streaming
Yep.
services are about the only thing that doesn't really cost you much money to do in this
Yeah.
business. So it's like, I guess it's an eye for an eye
Well, how do
there.
you mix and master? How do you go about that? Because for me, that's my biggest like question mark.
Mix and master.
Yeah, yeah. In terms of like money,
Oof.
right?
See, only recently started touring about 10 to 12 to I want to say 10 to 20 times a month, like show wise. And so
Yeah.
it's been interesting because for a while I wasn't really thinking about it. I was just booking them, and I was like, hey, this is great. Like I have all these dates lined up. I'm going to be in this city. I'm going to be in this city. Like this is my bucket list venue too. I'm like right here. And my parents will be like, well, what's your budget? And I'm like,
Ooh.
my what? Like money.
Yeah.
I've never had to focus on that too much, but now I think it's I've got some very cool, like I'm 17 and my band members are adults. They're all adults, so they have bills to pay. They have jobs. They have to take into account like money, and that's something that I don't have to do very
Yeah.
often. That's something I'm preparing for now. And so I think making a budget when it comes to touring and stuff, just like this is how much I'm going to make, this is how much I can spend, while still making some sort of profit, so I'm not losing on every single show. And merch also helps. Having merch and selling it also just adds on to money that you wouldn't have if you didn't have it.
Yeah. And so then do you record everything yourself? Do you mix it to yourself? How do you approach that?
Ooh, man. Yeah. Yeah, I do. All my early stuff was I did myself.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Man, are we talking money wise or studio wise
We're
now?
talking studio wise, and that's the thing.
Okay.
Because if you got to go into someone else's studio, hire someone else to mix, hire someone else
Yeah.
to master, now that's eating into the money.
Okay. I get it now.
Yeah.
I think I was a little lost. Okay. I get where
Yeah.
we're at. So when it comes to like the mixing and mastering, like you were asking before,
Yeah.
when I first was recording, like all my early stuff, I had like a bunch of folk projects, and I did those all myself from my bedroom. I had no clue how to mix and master. I did it anyway, and I will say it's not my greatest work ever, but it's there and it's available on Spotify if you want to listen to how odd my methods were. But yeah, I did it by myself. But when I got my band and we went into the studio, we paid the guy at the studio and then we outsourced mixing and mastering. And the guy was super price friendly though, so it wasn't too much.
Oh, good, good. And then were you using plugins like I guess for me? So the big thing with me and like doing like when I'm working on stuff now
Yeah,
is to get a giant 4x12 cabinet with a whole stack,
yeah,
right? Like friggin'
yeah,
Van Halen. That's
yep,
a little cost prohibitive. And then to have another one of an entirely different set of
right,
speakers and
right.
amplifiers, and then to mic that and to make all that noise. So instead, I just have my handy dandy
Yes, that is
audio
exactly
interface,
what I
my little
use.
Scarlett.
I cut demos occasionally to take to the studio. Scarlett is like my best friend, man. That little two channel. You don't need anything else in my opinion. You don't have to overdo it.
Yeah.
But when I'm at home, I know how to program drums. I learned how to do that, so I didn't have
Oh
to
wow.
mic the whole kit like I was doing before. Um,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, usually I just use plugins, man. GarageBand is pretty effective, actually. They have some great plugins that I feel like a lot of people take for granted.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm dabbling in it. I'm about to start exploring and seeing if I can do at least for the next couple songs because I kind of want to rebrand myself and record some new music. I kind of evolved my sound of what my band, and so this will be interesting too.
Yeah.
Is talking about how do you pivot? How do you pivot? I want to hear from you.
Oh, see,
Teach me.
that's a pretty big thing
Yeah.
because I'm not sure how much research went into this prior, but I have two Spotify's. I have one that has like a lot of folk songwriter
Yep.
music on it. And then I have this new Spotify that I just made in like March of this year with my full band, and it's very rock centered, like heavy stuff. And I guess there's not really a way to pivot. You just start promoting. You know, you're just like, hey, this is a sound that I've been working on, and I want to show it to you guys. And if that's something that you're super passionate about too, I think you just make that your main thing, and that's kind of what I've done. um, you know, it's an
Yeah.
interesting process because you're like, what's everybody going to think? Everybody's known me for playing this kind of music, especially because my early stuff got like 40. My biggest song I think has 40,000 streams, and so it's like it got a lot of attention, and it's super cool, and I'm still very passionate about the songwriting stuff. But like switching over to the full band and doing that rock centered stuff, I guess I just kind of did it. I was just like, hey, it's what we're doing now, you know. Hope y'all like it, kind of thing. So
Okay. I think you've on my end. You're a little choppy right now.
yeah, my I feel like my internet's going in and out a little bit as well. I think it says trying to reconnect a couple. It said trying to reconnect a couple times. We've
Oh my
we live in
gosh.
an interesting area. It's a little spotty on internet occasionally.
Yeah, yeah. What part of Texas? I don't know much
Uh,
geography.
man, I
I
live in
just
the
know there's Dallas, there's Austin, there's Houston.
yeah. So I live in like the subsidiary of Dallas. It's the more suburban part. It's Fort Worth area is what Fort Worth is uh very saturated in music as well. So it's very good to be here. It's a
Oh.
very welcoming spot. Fort Worth is a
Okay, and then oh wait, you're cutting out a little bit.
oh,
Here we go.
am I back in?
Hello. There we go. Yeah, you're back. Okay,
Yeah.
so Fort Worth. Okay, so when you're booking shows, are you going? Because now you're booking for the band.
Yes.
Are you using like, look, we have 40,000 listens on this song, even though it's the folk song? Like, how do you book
That's very
when you're pivoting?
interesting. because even with the band, it's Jaxon Malone Band, so I'm still marketing just me. It's just like this. I don't know, man. That's a pretty good question. I guess I'm still marketing myself, so everything that people listen to, and it's still all me. Like it's my
Yeah,
show. I'm blessed enough to have these guys, my band, backing me up. Those guys are all amazing musicians, like 10 times better than I wish I could be. And but yeah, man, it's still me marketing myself towards these booking agents and these agencies and stuff. It's just like, hey, instead of just me, it'll be me but full band. So, and that's what we're called. It's just Jaxon Malone Band, man. So I guess I
got it.
still just
And
market
so is the
myself.
reception? Oh, sorry. Is the reception from the audience? Do they come, kind of expecting more folk, but then they're okay with it, or what have you felt the audience has responded?
Man, it's been actually very, very welcoming. It's like I've been asked to play a couple folk songs of my folk songs at some of my full band shows, and I'm like, man, my
Hmm.
band doesn't do that. But sometimes we'll do like an acoustic break, and I'll bring out my acoustic and play some of that stuff. But man, the audiences have been super, super welcoming about that kind of stuff, man. There's a big saying going on lately, and people have been saying rock is dead for a long time, but a lot of people say rock is not dead, and it just moved to Texas. So I feel like a lot of people are just very,
Ooh.
very, very welcoming about that. People love that stuff down here.
Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing. I think it's 48% of Americans, their number one genre is rock.
Really?
Still, it's the biggest, yeah, in terms of what's your favorite genre?
Yeah,
Biggest answer.
rock. Yeah, honestly, that's believable. I mean, it's such a wide genre as well.
Yeah.
But I feel like when people say rock is dead, I feel like they just mean there's not any good bands anymore, and they keep that like tunnel vision where it's like, oh, Led Zeppelin, ZZ Top, Leonard
Yeah.
Skinner, the Eagles, all these guys, and they're like, oh, they're not here anymore. Rock's dead. Like the rock and roll is still being carried on from these bands from 30, 60, 50, whatever years ago, and I don't think they realize like there's so many good people out there now. Like rock's not dead, man. It's still very much here.
You
And
just haven't heard about it.
yeah, exactly. You just haven't gotten out of that little cage that you're in. You know, Led Zeppelin still very good, but it's like you can find some pretty good bands now.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's crazy. Yeah, so 48%, and so that's what I think that's kind of the thesis behind the podcast thing is being able to actually show people like, hey, if I can build myself and my audience up, and like, oh yeah, 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 then I can be like, here's this other great person, Jaxon Malone. You should go check
Exactly.
him out.
Yeah.
As a band, I just uploaded an episode. They're called Integra Pink. I'm like, they're cool and they're from LA. I'm like, go check them out. And they're
Yeah.
different sounds. And the
Yeah.
music that I'm going to be pivoting to is going to be like a different sound. It's going to be, you know, different from them. They're more like, I wouldn't say like indie, but I would say like alternative rock. Like if you think what alternative rock was maybe like 20 years ago, now it kind of all sounds like just like there's no distortion, and it's just like kind of like what you'd call like surf,
Yeah,
but
dude.
even that, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm just saying they're like kind of what used to be called alternative rock, and
Yeah.
then like you're doing like I would say more like rock country, and
Yeah.
like what you're saying, like you're bridging this gap. And so that's the thing. So there's a lot of these big like country rock crossover type of things happening right now.
Very
Do you
much
think
so.
that's do you think that's something you're able to feed into that's able to help you kind of like bridge that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I live in Texas, man. And you can't escape country. And I think there's been a lot of very, very inspiring people lately that have been blowing up in the scene, and they just take that rock and roll, man, and they keep that little bit of country aspect, and that's definitely something I can feed off of because there's a lot of both in this scene, especially around here. So it's like you know, like it's a little bit of both, and everybody seems to like that.
Yeah, yeah, it's good to get, a mix going. That's the
Yeah,
thing I've realized in general. Audiences now everyone has the same Spotify we do,
Yeah,
right? You're not listening to an album. You're listening to a playlist with all the different individual vibes back to back. And so in your brain, it can kind of meld. And so then you can just make music. It's kind of got.
exactly, man. I think fusion is a very big thing in this industry, and I think originality is has a
Yeah.
lot to do with that as well. Like me, I I take inspiration, but it's like everybody throws a little bit of them into it as well, into their things,
Yep.
and I think that's super cool as well. Like keeping the originality while feeding into a certain aspect that everybody likes. It's like adding your own little spice to whatever's already happening.
It's what's on the menu.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, so what I was thinking was like back in the day you would have had MTV and you would see all the different music you'd exposed to it. I think in 5, 10 years from now, I think you're gonna see a lot of the charismatic rock people and kind of people with bands. I think you're gonna see them having their own podcasts. And I think that's gonna be like everyone's gonna be like, oh, I want to get on a podcast, want to do a podcast circuit,
yeah,
promote the record.
yeah. That's I think that's pretty cool too, because I think that especially
Yeah.
things like this, because I feel like we met just by chance, and now
Yeah.
it's turned into an opportunity, and I feel like what you're doing with the podcast, you're like creating opportunities, for promotion, for
Yep.
like you never know when one of these could just blow up all of a sudden, and it's such an interesting thing, and it's super cool. I really respect the work that you do as well, just because it's feeding into the dream that so many other people have. It's super cool.
Yeah, and well, that's the funny thing is all it takes is there's a band I kind of realized I think it was if you have let's say you've got anywhere from 20 to 40,000 followers and you could post it literally on your Instagram. Those
Yeah,
views count the same as views on YouTube and things like that.
yeah,
If you took that and you did like a 45-minute podcast twice a week and you've got anywhere from 20 to 40,000 followers, you could make 10 grand a month from advertising. You'd only need 2 or 3 advertisers, and that could be that's a lot of money that you can put into either ads to promote your music
yeah,
or and then it gains you more followers, which then now let's say if you're at 80,000 followers, now you're making 20 grand a month, and now you've got even more money to put into like the music, and then because that's the thing. If you've got that many follower number, if you got 40,000, that's the ultimate goal. Because then I'm secure. Then I'm not relying on the guest for the views. Then I can have on any artist I want, smaller, bigger, whatever, and I'm
yeah.
still know that I'm gonna have the money to live off of.
Right, exactly. And
Yeah.
that's kind of when you use your tool to push other people forward. It's
Yep.
like when you get that big, it's like you can take advantage of like, hey, I can make these opportunities and help other artists grow just off of my fan base. Because it's like
Yeah.
even if only 100 of your followers like the one person that you bring on, that's still 100 people. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's like planting seeds everywhere, and it's it's
Yep.
it's a great start.
And that's the thing too is like if there's 20,000 views or 30,000 views on an episode with a guest, it's like what are the odds that at least 300 of them are going to go follow them, especially if you have it so they're co-posted with you, like
Right.
they just click it, it's right there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
and then it's on their profile too, and it adds credibility. You're like, oh, this band's only got 1,000 followers. You click the first pin thing; it's their music. You go, oh, they're pretty good. Second thing, you're like, holy cow, this
yeah.
is this is a big media thing. You're like, wow, these guys are real. And then like, I'm not saying that's fair or whatever, but there's should, could, and would, but and then there's what is. And what
Yeah.
it is if they see you're on a big thing, like if you were on Joe Rogan tomorrow, a lot more people would go, oh, this guy's the real deal.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that is a thing you can give to people. And so what's interesting is you're right. It's once I get there though, and that's kind of thing I'm realizing now is like to bridge that gap, I might have to like just get big guests for 2 or 3 months, get the biggest guests I can, prove that track record, get the advertisers, keep getting big guests for another couple months. But then every month I'm able to take the money. And after like 6 months, I should, if I reinvest all the money into advertisement
Yeah.
on Instagram, I should be able to have enough followers that I'm at 40,000 and now I can have on anyone I want for the rest of time.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's creating your own opportunities, you know. It's you can't just sit around and really wait for one, you know. You're just like, "Oh, well, I'm just kind of posting these videos and hoping they blow up, just putting on whoever I want," you know. It's like this is what I want and this is how I've got to get there
Yep.
and this is what I'm going to do to get there. You know, it's making those opportunities and at least having a goal and a plan. It's already recipe for success, you know.
Yeah, yeah. So what's your okay? So now we kind of got to it from my end, and this is where I want to get on your end. For me, what's the ultimate goal? Full time. Now, how do I measure success? And so, how do I know I'm making progress towards it? I know for me, it's if I have 8 guests on for the month, their follower count has to add up to 320,000. And so
Okay.
I know each month, okay, how many of the guests do I have booked, right?
Yeah.
And I can know, and then how many do I have recorded? And how many months have I done that in a row? Those are ways for me to measure that I'm making progress towards that first big goal,
Right.
And so
Yeah,
for
man.
you, what's your plan? Because you said the first step is having a good plan.
Yeah.
What's your plan and how do you measure it's working?
Man, for me, I think that playing the social media game is very big as well, just
Mm-hmm.
because of the day and age. And
Yeah,
my plan is to have a lot of music lined up. The more music you
got it.
can put out, the more people have to really listen to, and I think that that adds up over time, at least. But I think getting a lot of music out and just being very heavy about the promotion and who I get in front of, like being in front of big artists, even where I'm at, like trying to gig full time
Yeah,
is a very big thing. I've gotten to put myself in front of some very big people. I've gotten to open for some very big people, at least in this industry, and it's been super cool watching. Like before the show, I'll have like 1,000 followers, and then after the show, I have like 1,350, and it's like people actually took away from it, you know. And it's just building that substantial, like, hey, leaving an impact here. And like you said, like if somebody were to like one of my videos and they go to my page and then they listen to my music and then they listen to my music again and again and like every day for a year till then, and it's like I've made a fan. So it's like
yep.
my plan is to just promote myself as much as possible to leave an impact on as many people as possible.
Yes. So promote myself and build up that catalog and then promote that. Okay, so what do you think about this? Because for me, that's the kind of funny thing about getting the big guests is in a roundabout way, over time that leads to getting sponsors because they're like, oh, you get a bunch of views on the videos.
Yeah.
But in the direct sense, I'm now I had a big guest on, and what's funny is most of the time after interview, I go, hey, I'm trying to do this full time, build this platform. Um, do you know any guests? Who's the biggest guest or the biggest social media person, most followers on Instagram who would like to come on? And they
Yeah.
often, like I went literally with one of the other bands, they only have a couple thousand followers like us, right? You're like, oh, okay, normal like guys. And they're like, oh yeah, my friend has like 200,000 followers. He'd probably come on. And you're
Yeah.
just like, oh, that's 200 out of my 300 for the month. And
Right.
I only have to do it 2 months in a row. And if he comes
Right.
on both months, you're like, oh, I just need to fill in the extra 100, which I can definitely do. And so you're like, that's the trick. Then I'm full time. Then I've
Yep.
solved. I only have to beat the game once. I only have to
Yeah.
win at the game once.
Exactly. And
And then
you
people know, and that's what I was going to say is the once I've got the 100,000 person guy on, I ask him, hey, do you have any friends? They're at
and
least
he's
at
got
their level
yeah,
or
he's
they're
got
bigger. And so you're just like,
exactly. That's a very
and so
big
that's
thing.
what I was going to say. You're opening for people. This has been a big tool for me to get to actually get someone on for an hour and get to actually have a talk with them. And so
Yeah,
I
man.
don't know if you would consider doing a podcast for that reason, because then you could get whoever, like the opener or whoever you're opening for, and be like, hey, would you do a podcast real quick, 30 minutes before we go on stage?
Yeah. That's a very big thing. And I think that like utilizing the people that you have already talked to, and that's a big building relationships deal. It's like, man, you're not just here for a podcast. It's like, hey man, you're here to make a new opportunity, that ties right back to the making
Yeah.
opportunity for yourself. It's like you meet these new people and it's like, hey, I'm meeting you for the first time. You know people that I don't, and I know people that you don't. And it's like, boom, you just swap, man. And I know you're out of Cali and I'm over here
Yep.
in Texas. It's like, that's a whole different market, man. It's like, I
Yep.
have no clue how the Cali game works, but it's like just getting my name on a podcast that is from California. That's already putting myself in this new market, like addressing like, hey, this Jaxon Malone guy, he lives in Texas, but he's got good music, man. And it's like that you just establish a whole new area, and that's what you can do here. Like after the podcast, I'd love to shoot you some guys who would love to be on. And so it's very, very cool because like it's going to introduce you to a lot of people over here in Texas. The music is so saturated, and I can't wait for this podcast to come out because I can't wait for some of the musicians that I'm friends with to see this and be like, hey, that'd be something I'd like to do. Because I know there will be some, and it'd be super cool to have them on here too. Like to see my friends be like, hey, I met that guy, and now people from Texas are getting in on this action. It's super cool.
Yeah. Well, I've got that happening with like Buffalo, New York, like Philadelphia, New Jersey, like random places.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's building, it's just planting seeds everywhere. Like I said, like, you're just dropping in your name in like Buffalo, like you said, and now you're here in Fort Worth, just, and it's creating quite the name and just everywhere you can get, man. Like that's why I was so eager to take this opportunity, because it's like, hey, that's just a new market, it's a new area,
Yeah.
and I'd love for people to start hearing my name over there, which is pretty cool. So
Yeah.
I feel like I might have
Oh, let's
broken
see.
up a little bit.
I was gonna say, yeah, I think you got a little choppy there.
Did I get a
It's
little
funny because
choppy?
for people watching, it'll just look like we're both we're
Just
like, yeah.
yeah, just sitting there staring at each other. That's great. The Wi-Fi,
Oh
Wi-Fi
my god.
situation. It's always such an obstacle. Right.
Okay. So what do you have in the tank? Are you planning on doing like singles and doing like 8 a year, and then you're like, okay, let me get 16. So if anything, like what's coming out and what do you have recorded?
Man, I have one song. I have two songs out. It's
Yep.
there's one that we did in the studio, and then one that we did live at a session in Austin. And then we're going back to the studio here in a couple weeks to cut a couple more songs. We're going to do like two or three, and then we're going to release them over the span of the rest of this year. And then next year, I'm just going to get money behind me, and I'm going to go cut probably 9 or 10, and like at the same time, just really put all of them together, and then keep a couple of them out so I could release them as singles, and then put the rest of them together, plus ones that a few people have already heard, and throw them in and drop a record. So that's what my plan is, at least.
Hell yeah. Yeah. Well, I like it. I like it. Well, I will give you. Have you considered doing? And because this is what I'm considering doing is just singles, 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 so that I've got new stuff coming out. And then once I'm doing it full time and I've got the full time money,
Yeah,
because that's the thing. Because I know I'm trying to think. I'm like, if I have a 10 song record, no one's heard the 10 songs. That could stretch me almost an entire year or a whole year.
yeah,
But one release as a record, maybe that gets me 4 months. Maybe that
right. That's very
and
smart too. That's a good thing to think about, because it's like having that kind of music where it's like you can be consistent all year.
yeah.
That's a very good idea, and that's something I should probably take into account too. Is just coming in, getting a bunch of songs done, and just stretching them out. That's
Yeah, well, I'll tell you because I did do that, and you end up if you put out the record and then you're like, oh man, I got to go right back in,
yeah,
and you're just like, because when you're starting out, you've got you have to do everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You don't have a team that's doing your photos and your
Yeah.
videos and your booking and your recording and you're paying for that, you know.
Yeah,
Woo.
you drop all that money and then you just drop that record and you're like, oh, well, now I've got to put all that money right back in to go do it again here in like a month or so, you know. So
Yeah.
yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense, and I feel like the more money efficient option as well would just stretch those 10 songs that you have, like drop one at a time, you know. Don't get crazy with it because, of course, if I had the money and the time, I would drop 7 albums a year. You know,
Yep.
I love making music. It's so fun, and I love for people to hear new stuff all the time. And I would kill to just have a new song every day for people. You know,
Yeah.
but it's like I said, it's a costly thing.
Yeah. Yeah. In the meantime, then you're thinking, yeah, because that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, do the singles. And then once I've got the money, oh, once I'm a full time musician, it's game over. You're getting
Right.
albums every month, right? Like you're
Yeah.
saying,
Yeah, dude. Once that full time money gets in, I'm making music all the time. I'll
oh,
probably
I'm
just
just, yeah.
at that point you can just I just put together my whole like my own studio, you know, get all
Yep.
the cool racks, all the big plugins, the giant board, the new drum kit, you know, just do it all, you know.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I'm like, I'm even good with programmed drums. I'm like, I get, yeah, yeah. And then that's the thing too, is then you just find a guy, because now you're successful, you're making money, you got a big audience. You can just hit up anyone on Instagram who's a really good drummer or that you've gigged with, and you'd be like, hey, can you record these and send them
Yeah,
over?
exactly. Yeah, it's surreal almost how much you wouldn't have to worry if you just had this little green bill, just a bunch of them, you know. It's
And
pretty cool to think
well,
about.
that's the thing. So that's where I'm just like, I guess, yeah, kind of having to pace myself, like until when I'm there, I can do the esoteric. I can do my 11-minute song. I've got an 11-minute song on the on,
Dude,
on my hard drive right now,
that's so
but I'm
cool.
not putting it out.
Right, yeah.
I'm not finishing it because it's got a whole orchestra on it, and I'm gonna have to
Oh,
sit there and dial everything in, and
yep.
it's so extra, and it's not gonna be worth putting it out because most people are gonna be turned off by it.
Yeah,
But if I sneak
yeah.
it onto an album once I'm already huge, people are gonna love it, and the people who
They're gonna be
wouldn't
like,
care
"Wow,
won't care.
that's genius. Who else has an 11-minute song, you know?" And it's like, but now if it's like you're this small creator and you're like, "Dude, nobody's going to listen to that. That's not what's going to
Yeah.
blow you up, you
When
know?"
they joke about that, people having like their 80-minute progressive metal album.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Dude.
no one's hearing that. No
Yeah,
one.
I gave up after 3 songs, dog. Like you lost my attention kind of thing.
Bro, 30 seconds.
Yo, yeah, that's very big. You've got to have something that just catches the ear right away. And
Yeah.
that's especially with the adaptation of social media. It's like people's attention spans are so small now.
Just
Nobody.
sell me right away. And
Yeah,
I'm guilty of it too. I'm like, just as a consumer, I'm like, if it's gonna rock, just rock right out the gate. And do
yeah,
that for the first like 20 songs. And then after that, it's like we're saying, it's like, oh no, I'm a fan of you. I already knew you've proven to me every time that I dig what you do.
yeah,
Now hit me with the 30-second intro and like Metallica or AC/DC, where they've got these long intros that are really cool and build. But like
yeah,
until you're that, I don't know this is going to lead to anything good because most times I hear someone I've never heard of before with a long intro, and then after a minute and a half, it sucks.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely. I totally understand that, and it's like as much as I want to be super technical and add all the things that go on in my brain into this one song, it's like you have to think about it. It's like, what is going to get me? Like you have that plan, you have that music plan, but you've also got to have a plan for the music that's going into that plan. You know what I mean? It's like, how is this song going to cater to the audience that I want? And how quickly could this get me to where I want to be? You know what I mean? You can't have like a
Yep.
45-second intro because people are going to turn it off. They're going to be like, bro, this guy's not even saying any words. And that's why, like, I couldn't be an instrumental guy because I would make the instrumental way too long. And, like, I would just end up, like, jamming instead
Yep.
of, like, actually making, like, decipherable
Live
pieces.
record. Live
Yeah.
record.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, exactly.
You jam on the live record. I think the dynamics and what the norms of the industry are being figured out right now, and I
Yeah,
predict one of them is if you hear the studio version of a song, it's straight into it. There's no intro. It's like lead with the chorus and then go back to the verse that builds.
right.
Like it might literally just be "Don't bore us," get to the chorus, right? But then
Yeah,
the live one, the live record, that maybe you do one every month because it's a live record,
yeah, yeah. Exactly.
and so those have the jams. Those live records could be the 2 hour show.
Yeah, yeah. Very much so. We've already cut a live record. It's being processed. We cut it back in March, but we're like fine tuning this thing. It's taking a while, but
Really? What's been the biggest thing? And do you think on the front there's anything you could do different to shorten how long it takes?
man, yeah, absolutely. I feel like having like at the time I was still using like the occasional hired gun and stuff like that in my band. And I feel like having a very tight band and just a
Mm,
solid of like a very solid on stage mix already. I feel like would kind of help that process because it's like
yeah,
we're not trying to add too many effects or anything. We're trying to keep it as raw as we can. Like you get the feel of like you were at that show, even if you weren't. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's a very very big thing and but dude, the mixing has taken a while, just like getting everything perfect.
yeah,
I'm very tedious with how I want my things to sound, and that's been the biggest part is just being very by the inch, with those songs.
yeah. Well, Jackson, it's unfortunately we're nearing the end here.
I'm devastated.
Do
It's
you have
been
anything you would like to share with the audience that they should go check out?
Man, we have music out. If I is on all platforms. That's my favorite song that we've ever cut, and it's one of our only songs. So I very strongly recommend you go check that one out because it captures our live sound pretty well. And we'll have new music coming out. So follow me on TikTok and on Instagram because that's where you'll see all of our releases and stuff. So, and if you come to Texas, please come see me. I'd be happy to give you a high five at a show. So,
Okay, you heard it here first. If you see Jackson, you're in Texas. He wants you to kiss him on the mouth first thing when you see him. Don't even say hi. Just run up. Just say, "You know what this is. You asked for it." Um,
that's
so yeah,
great.
what's your TikTok? What is it?
It's the exact same as my well actually no it's not. It's just Jaxon Malone Music. JaxonMalone Music. So
Okay. Thanks for watching. Go check it out, everyone. This is the super cool outro. I made it. Super cool outro. Cue outro in 3, 2, 1.